guys, so I'm here today to do my December book haul. You know the drill, so let's jump straight into the books. I'm going to start with the two books I've just taken out of the library a few days ago. The first one of which is Strange Weather in Tokyo by Hirome Kawakami. I've heard a lot about this author on BookTube from booktubers that read Japanese literature. I think there was one in particular, I think called Thrift Store, that was quite popular. But my library had a copy of this one and I've been enjoying reading Japanese literature recently, so I wanted to check this author out. It is about a young woman who meets back up with one of her teachers or sensei from when she was younger, now that she's older, and they start up a sort of like friendship which seems to develop into something more. And it's about that kind of like meeting at different points in your life and what comes of that relationship. So I'm really intrigued to try this author's writing style because I hear really good things. But I also picked up the first volume in a comic book series, and that is Goldie Vance. This I've actually already read. I read this for the Queer Lit Readathon because the main protagonist, Goldie Vance, is attracted to other women. So she was like a queer protagonist, and I enjoyed this. I saw it over on Kathy's channel originally, and she was reading the series, and I'm going to continue on with it. The first volume hasn't turned it into my favourite graphic novel comic book series of all time, but quite often comic book series I have come to really love. I haven't loved the first issue of just because it takes a while to really get into everything and all of the characters. So I'm going to keep going with this one, even though I just thought it was okay. It's kind of like a mixture of Veronica Mars and Grease is what I've been calling it, because it's about a girl detective working at a hotel. There's things like car racing, and yeah, it's definitely not the 21st century, and it's good fun, and I really like the artwork. So here's an idea of what the artwork looks like inside. It's cute and colourful, and I'm really into that. So we'll be checking out the second volume from my library if they have it, fingers crossed. I then have two books a friend lent me, the first and the second in a series, and that is This Savage Song and Our Dark Duet. I think this is the second one and this is the first one, by V.E. Schwab. I will obviously have to make certain before I start reading them. But basically, my friend Ailsa and her fiance Sam were shocked that I had never read V.E. Schwab, and they said that I would really like these ones, and in particular, you know, apparently once I've read the first one I will want to read the second one immediately, so they insisted I borrowed both of them, which was very kind. Ailsa actually has a booktube channel, so I'll link her down below. Please remind me if I forget. But I have been sold, so hopefully I enjoy these. I don't really know what they're about. I only know that everyone seems to love V.E. Schwab and they recommended these. I believe they're fantasy though. Kate Harker and August Flynn are the heirs to a divided city, a grisly metropolis where the violence has begun to create real and deadly monsters. All Kate wants is to be as ruthless as her father, who lets the monsters roam free and makes the inhabitants pay for his protection. August just wants to be human, as good-hearted as his own father, but his curse is to be what the humans fear. The thin truce that keeps the Harker and Flynn families at peace is crumbling, and an assassination attempt forces Kate and August into a tenuous alliance. Dun dun dun. So let me know if you've read these. I then have a book I was sent by the publisher, which you will be seeing in my mid-month wrap-up very soon because I've already read it, and that is Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Ngan. I ended up really enjoying this. It's a young adult fantasy novel with a queer relationship at the centre, so I read it again for the Queer Lit Readathon. And the kind of cultural backdrop and setting of this book is in large part inspired by Asia, and particularly Malaysia, where I believe the author is from. So there's lots of elements of that in there, and it's a very dark fantasy novel. It's a society in which young girls are chosen every year from the lowest caste in this society to serve as the king's 8 concubines, whether they like it or not. So it does involve non-consensual sex, rape, and kind of a form of sexual slavery. And our protagonist is one of those girls who's chosen to become one of the king's paper girls, as they're called, but she instead falls in love with another young woman at the palace, and that's what it's all about. And the queer romance in this was beautiful. The romance in this is beautiful. If you at all like well-developed, described relationships between two characters, then this one is fantastic. Love their relationship, but like I said, I'll talk about it more in my wrap up. On the topic of fantasy though, I did pick myself up 3 mass market paperback fantasy books, as always. Got to include some of these in the haul. The first one I bought full price for myself as soon as I finished the first book, and that is Tower of Thorns by Juliet Marillier. This is the second book in the Blackthorn and Grimm series. So the first book I read a couple of weeks ago follows Blackthorn and Grimm, who have escaped from this prison, and Blackthorn is a healer woman and Grimm just becomes sort of like her companion and her helping hand, and they travel to this small kingdom and serve the like townsfolk as healers and helpers. But the prince of this land has a bit of a mystery that he needs them to help him with, and it's weird because it's sort of like high fantasy set in medieval Ireland, where the protagonists are basically like Holmes and Watson. Like they end up turning into kind of detectives, which I loved. And I think they have another mystery to solve in this book, so I'm really excited to see what that is. The next two I picked up second hand though, and you will have to forgive me for the state of the first one, because this bit is about to fall off. Yeah, like I think part of me is tempted just to tear that off. It's like this bit is torn. I didn't do that, it was torn when I bought it, but it doesn't really matter because the pages are intact. And that is The Lark and the Wren, book 1 in the Bardic Voices series by Mercedes Lackey. I picked this up in an Oxfam secondhand bookshop, and I've never actually read any Mercedes Lackey, but I hear if you're into like female-led fantasy novels in this kind of genre, then she is an author that you need to check out. So I've been meaning to pick up something by her for ages, and you know, finally have this in my hands. This one I purely just bought because this is what they had, but the back reads, "With the proper schooling, young Rune would be one of the greatest bards her world had ever seen, even if only she knows it. Unfortunately, the daughter of a tavern wench at the Hungry Bear, no matter how talented, doesn't get much in the way of formal training. What she does get is frustrated. One night, to back up a brag she probably wouldn't have made if she weren't so mad, she went up to play her fiddle for the ghost of Skull Hill. Everyone knows that no one who has ever gone up Skull Hill at night has come down again, not alive anyway. But when the ghost appears, Rune strikes a bargain. If the ghost tires of her playing before morning, her life is his. If he is still listening when the sun glints over yonder hill, she will have earned both life and a sack of silver. Let the music begin." No idea what to expect from this, but hoping that this author is as great as everyone says. And then lastly, a book by Sharon Shin, who's a high fantasy author I've read before. I read Summers at Castle Auburn, which was more of a young adult fantasy novel. I think this might fall into the same kind of category, but I still really enjoyed it. And this is The Truth Teller's Tale. This one again is a little bit torn, but not as badly as the other one. This is about two identical twins. I believe there is a romance between one of the twins and somebody else, and then because of that there's some mistaken identities and magic, and that's all I really need to know, given that I've enjoyed something else by the author before. The next two books were sent to me by the publisher, and that is Princeton Press, and I'm so excited for both of them. They're both quite different, although the covers kind of, you know, recall one another. But these books are Gods and Robots by Adrienne Mayer. This author also wrote a book called The Amazons, which is a really good non-fiction book about the Amazons, and this is a non-fiction ancient history book about gods and robots. I know, what does that mean? The subtitle is Myths, Machines and Ancient Dreams of Technology. So it's sort of like about like the first inklings of technology and inspiration behind inventions in antiquity. I honestly don't know what to expect from this, but I'm so interested because I have never read anything dealing with this topic in ancient times, and that's one of the things I look for in my ancient history books is, you know, something new. So I think this will be absolutely fascinating. In fact, it says, the fascinating untold story of how the ancients imagined robots and other forms of artificial life, and even invented real automated machines. Does that not intrigue you? Plus, this cover is gorgeous. And then I have Workers' Tales, Socialist Fairy Tales, Fables and Allegories from Great Britain, edited by Michael Rosen. You may have heard me talk about Michael Rosen before. He's one of my favourite people of all time. He's also a poet and a children's author. And this is, as the title suggests, a collection of various different tales from different parts of Britain, from over the years, like from different authors. So yeah, we've got stories going back to the 1800s as well as stories from the early 1900s. So, you know, like, it covers a range of time, and it explores kind of like fables that deal with working class themes and perhaps were shared amongst working class communities. And I just completely trust Michael Rosen to have done a wonderful job in editing these, because he is fantastic. Politically, really admire him, and cannot wait to see what's inside this collection. The next 3 books you might have already seen though if you watched my reading vlog from the Queer Lit Readathon, because I was sent all these in the post and shared them with you when I was sent them. But they were sent to me by the publishers, and the first one was sent to me by Kate Poetry, and it is Vertigo and Ghost by Fiona Benson. And what absolutely fascinates me about this poetry collection is it specifically explores Zeus's acts of sexual violence towards women in myth, and sexual violence in Greek myth, as well as Athenian politics and law, are what my thesis deals with. And although Zeus isn't a major part of my thesis, these are obviously themes that are very close to my heart that I researched, and I found the idea of somebody exploring the nuances of those stories in poetry written in the modern day absolutely fascinating, and I cannot wait to read this one. It will be my next poetry collection for sure. I then have another book inspired by Greek myth, slightly different though, and this is Oh My God by Alexandra Shepherd. This is a young adult novel that comes out in January, and honestly keep an eye out for it because it sounds amazing, and it's actually the next book I'm picking up as soon as I'm finished my current book. I probably will have already started it by the time you're watching this book haul. And it is about our protagonist Helen, who lives in London with her family in modern day, but nobody knows her family are actually ancient Greek gods going incognito. So she is dealing with all of the ordinary life stuff of being a young woman or a teenager in modern day Britain, along with the fact that nobody can know who her family really are and kind of how that affects her life. And it sounds mad but amazing, and I'm hearing really good things so far. Then there's The Curses by Laura Eve, which was sent to me by Faber. This is the sequel to The Graces, which I read last year, I believe, which is a young adult novel with kind of witchy elements. It's set in a high school, and it's about these mysterious young people, and you don't know if they're witches or they're not witches, and our character is initially an outsider but then becomes part of their clique. Although so much drama happened in the first book that I needed this sequel. I've been waiting for it for ages because, you know, things really hit the fan and a lot is coming in book 2. Like, I already can sense it, so I'm really excited to see what happens to these characters. It's a really mysterious, fun, sometimes dark young adult series, very much appropriate for fans of the film The Craft. Then 2 more books I was sent by the publisher, and both from Vintage, are There by Tommy Orange, and I have just been hearing the most wonderful things about this book since it came out. People have been raving about it across the pond in particular. I'm so excited to have my copy of it. And this one in particular deals with characters that are from Indigenous backgrounds or Native American backgrounds in the United States, which is not something I have actually read any of, I believe, in literature from like an Own Voices author. So I'm really excited to experience this, and like I said, I've just been hearing so much praise. Although I also hear it might break my heart or make me cry or get me emotional. Because I needed more antiquity based books in this haul, I have read Thread on Mazes and Labyrinths by Charlotte Higgins. This, if you can't tell, is kind of inspired by the myth of Theseus and the Minotaur, and it explores the history of that myth, the Minotaur having been kept in the labyrinth on Crete, and the story of King Minos, and all of those different interactions, as well as the real Cretan society that the Minoans were said to come from. So I am so interested in this because I believe it constructs like a narrative that you can read as a story, but based on like scholarship and non-fiction evidence. So it's got like pictures in there as well, and I love that kind of combination of 2 things in a book. What more could I possibly want? And it's a myth that I actually know quite a lot about. It's a myth I've studied quite a lot, and I studied the Minoans a lot at university. Had been to Knossos and Crete, find them a really fascinating civilization, but haven't read anything about in a while, so I think it would be nice to have this kind of like full book on that topic to rediscover that world. We then have a highly anticipated release for 2019 that everyone's talking about, I'm sure, and that is Black Leopard Red Wolf by Marlon James. Marlon James previously wrote A Brief History of 7 Killings, which won the Man Booker Prize in 2015, and I really enjoyed. This is quite a turn from that though, because that was a sort of historical novel set around the time of the attempted assassination of Bob Marley, whereas this is a high fantasy novel with inspiration from African folklore and magic. So really different, but I know I enjoy this author's writing, I know I enjoy fantasy, so I've got high hopes. I was also sent The Illumination of Ursula Flight by Anna Marie Crowhurst. This one in particular I was interested in reading because Anna James was saying how good it is. Anna James is an author, she has a YouTube channel, and she's on various other social media platforms talking about books, so I will link her links down below, but she was saying how much she enjoyed this book and just sold it to me. The blurb says, born on the night of a bad luck comet, Ursula Flight has difficult destiny written in the stars. She dreams of becoming a famous playwright, but is devastated to learn she must instead fulfill her family's expectations and marry. Trapped and lost, Ursula plots her escape, but her freedom will come at a price. As Ursula's dangerous desires play out, both on and off the stage, she's flung into a giddy world of actors, aristocrats, and artistic endeavours. The life she craves feels tantalisingly close, but in an era when quick-witted women are to be feared and punished, will her irresponsible spirit allow her to flourish, or will it instead be her downfall? So this is a female-led historical novel. But like I said, heard great things about it, so really looking forward to reading. And then the last two books that were also sent to me by the publishers were sent to me by Pan Macmillan, and those include Children of Blood and Bone by Tommy Adeyemi. I'm sure you've all heard of this. It has been so hyped. It is a young adult fantasy novel, another one that is inspired by African folklore and tradition, and it's been getting a lot of praise, so I'm excited to have a copy in my hands. On the back it simply says, "They killed my mother, they took our magic, they tried to bury us." So I'm purely going on the hype for this one, and I'm really excited to give it a shot. And lastly, I have The Age of Light, a novel by Whitney Shearer, and this is about a young woman who's an artist's muse. It's a historical novel set in 1929, but however, as she kind of like seeks her independence and finds herself, this artist that she was the muse for becomes obsessed with her, and there's like dark tension going on there, and perhaps like danger from this artist. So I'm intrigued. I like dark, I like historical, I like female driven, so I am there for this. It comes out in February of next year as well. But those are the books I have recently acquired. Plenty to be getting on with, a few I've already read and quite a few more that I'm really excited to read. I would love to hear your thoughts if you have read or are interested in reading any of these books. I'd love to chat with you about them in the comments down below, so please do let me know your thoughts. But until next time, happy reading, and I'll see you all again soon. Bye guys.